Welcome to LNK TV. I'm Dale Johnson, your host, as we talk about all things Lincoln Fire and Rescue. Happy summer, by the way, now that we're into the month of July. Nancy Christ is here from the Lincoln Fire and Rescue Department, Public Information Officer. We're going to talk about summer stuff, dangerous things, and the potentially dangerous things, because everything from a grill to a fire pit to smoking outside can be done safely. Thousands of people do it every day. But when there is neglect, when people try to push the envelope a little bit or have things too close to the house, that's where we get into trouble. So that's what we will talk about today with Nancy Christ. So we're not scaring you away from doing anything outside in the summertime, just do it safely. So let's talk about that. Summer is the time when people get used to camping. They have picnics outside. There was 4th of July not that long ago. And people get outside to do grilling and fire pits. So let's talk, first of all, with outdoor cooking, with grills. Are you and here's an important question, are you a charcoal or a natural gas person there, Nancy?
Oh, I love the taste of charcoal food, but we have, for convenience, gone to using gas. Is
one more dangerous than the other from a firefighter perspective?
No, not necessarily. As long as they're attended, just like anything, I don't think either one is more dangerous than the other.
In a windy situation, I suppose maybe charcoal arguably could be with the embers.
Sure. The embers, you know, we always suggest that there's a grate over your cooking surface to kind of help contain those embers. But sure, you know, if there's wind, they could be knocked over, you know, especially the small grills in a camping type scenario. They could be knocked over, but yeah, generally speaking, I think they're probably pretty equal.
We're going to talk about fire pits before too long during this conversation, and I know there is a distance requirement for fire pits. How about grills?
You know, one of the major things that we talk about is that you cannot have a grill on a balcony of a multi-family structure. In other words, apartment buildings cannot have grills or fire pits, heating pits on their grill or on their deck. So that's something that I know a lot of people still do, and we have a lot of deck fires, and oftentimes they're associated to those grills on decks. So
I recall years ago an hibachi, small, probably a foot, 18 inches, and you would think that there wouldn't be enough danger in something small like this, but it was, I recall a fire on the 3rd floor deck, and I recall a hibachi fire on the ground floor where grass caught on fire. So it doesn't matter if it's flammable and sparks and embers, it can cause a fire.
Well, and you know, if you really conceptualize it, you really think about it, heat rises. We know that. So if you have a hibachi or a small grill, even on the lower level deck, that heat's going to rise to that deck above. And you know, it doesn't take much for that transfer to create a fire, and then add wind to it. And before you know it, we've had a few of those fires that started as a small deck fire and turned into, you know, a multiple fire within several units of an apartment complex. So,
as I was reviewing some of the information for our talk here today, something came up that I had not thought of: long sleeves as opposed to short sleeves. Now, why would you wear a long sleeve shirt when it's 103? Well, you wouldn't, but you can grill outside when it's nice and cool, and if you do have a long sleeve, it didn't cross my mind that that could be, that could catch on fire.
Right. Yeah, anything. You know, I think of, you know, the kind of clothes that I wear when I'm not working, and like jackets or you know, cardigans with flowing sleeves or anything like that can catch so quickly without even noticing.
And this might sound silly to those of you who are watching us, but if it happens just once with long sleeves and you catch your sleeve on fire and you do things you're not supposed to do, like wave it around trying to put it out, that can cause a lot of injuries, which brings me to another subject, and that is, as firefighters respond to burns, that has to be one of the probably most emotional. That and kids maybe are two of the high emotional calls for service that you will have, because burns are extremely painful for the person, obviously, but for the firefighters who have to, and the medics who have to take care of them, that can be emotional.
Absolutely. And you know, I think another thing that people don't think about is the most serious burns sometimes are those to the hands. You know, we think about the respiratory system, we think about the face, you know, but the hands, you know, because of the functionality of your hands, you use your hands all the time. And so if they get burnt, those are the most serious burns that we deal with. And of course, we take them to the burn center and they get treatment right away. But you're exactly right. That's a painful, painful injury.
While we're on the subject of grills, we talked about there really is no specific distance between the grill and the house, but things around the grill. Sometimes grills are in the middle of the deck. Sometimes they're tucked off to the side, but if they're in the middle of the deck, you have tables, you have kids, you have chairs, you have furniture, you have other things that are out there on the deck. Make sure there's a safe distance around them.
You know, we really talk like indoor fireplaces and things like that. We really talk about that 3-foot rule, trying to ensure that there's kind of, at the very least, and that's a minimal, a 3-foot radius around anything like a grill, a tabletop, fire pit, a fireplace within your home, that there's at least a 3-foot radius of safety.
You bring up fire pits. Not a fire pit guy. I have one, and I've enjoyed sharing time with others that have fire pits, but really haven't fired mine up yet. When I do, there are certain restrictions and certain requirements, standards that I need to remember. Let's talk fire pits.
So if a fire pit is a stationary structure, in other words, it's built into the ground, or it's something that has masonry around it that you're not moving about, it has to be at least 25 feet from any structure. And when we say any structure, that means a detached garage or a fence or your home. So I think people think structures and they think, oh, 25 feet from my home, okay. But it can't be within 25 feet of that fence either, because that can catch.
I'm thinking of my house. I don't know if I could even have a fire pit with using that measurement, that yardstick as the safety zone. And so someone should keep that in mind. Oh, I'll just go out in the driveway. I've got 6 feet of concrete in all directions. I'm going to be safe. But the neighbor's picket fence off to the side. You've got some grass there that might be a little bit dry. So
vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have a portable fire pit, I think of like the chimeneas, those types of structures, they have to be within 15 feet of any type of structure. So you can't put that close to the fence either. It needs to be at least 15 feet.
What is safe to burn in a fire pit?
Good question. The only thing that is recommended to burn in any type of fire pit is sawn wood. So that means you can't burn paper, you can't burn even twigs off your tree. You know, you do that cleanup and you have a little pile of leaves, and sometimes it feels tempting to throw them into that fire pit. Sawn wood only. And I'll go on to kind of explain that a little bit, Dale. The sawn wood will burn clean. It's meant to burn. Leaves, twigs, paper, they may emit embers, but then they also emit a noxious smoke. And then that turns into a different scenario. It becomes a health safety issue. If a neighbor complains because there's too much smoke in the air from a fire pit next door, the person's going to be asked to put that out, because it's putting off noxious smoke that can become a health and safety issue for an individual.
I also don't burn treated lumber. I don't know if that's protocol, if that's wise to do, or whether it even makes a difference.
Correct. It's only sawn wood, and that treated lumber, again, those chemicals can burn and become noxious.
How about these purchased logs that you can buy that has a little wick on one end and you light it and it does what it's supposed to do without having to add You see them in fireplaces. Would those
Yeah,
be safe in fire pits?
Those are safe because they're treated with the appropriate chemical starter. It's basically starter fluid within that log. So,
Okay.
yep, they're safe.
Garden hose nearby?
Yes. So, they need to be attended at all times. Don't start a fire pit and then get distracted back inside your home. Once you start a fire pit, it has to be attended at all times. And we suggest a water source or an extinguishment source of some kind. It can be, a hose, water, a bucket, an extinguisher, any of the above.
There are outdoor kitchens. There are outdoor fireplaces. Not too many fireplaces being fired up here in the throes of July. But there are other enjoyments, recreational features that people have on their decks and outside. The kitchens come to mind. They're probably safer than a grill, I'm guessing.
Because they're more contained. They're designed to have just a heated surface, and they're contained within an area. So, but similar would apply. An outdoor kitchen would still have stipulations of where it can be in relation to the home.
Fire hazards today on LNK TV with LFR. Let's talk about smoking. That's not just a summer event, obviously. It can happen at 31 below, as in February. It can happen when it's 103 degrees, as we have had not that long ago.
Right.
So talk about the safety features in order to smoke outside appropriately.
Well, again, the first thing we think of is just be sure that you have a receptacle that you're extinguishing cigarettes into. Preferable to have a metal type receptacle with sand in the bottom. We find people throw cigarette butts in boxes or just any kind. Sometimes people put cigarettes out on the deck, on the decking itself. And what I think what people don't realize is that those can kind of sit and smolder and burn. And even if you think, okay, I'm good, leave it, that sits and kind of festers and then eventually can ignite and start those deck fires or start a fire, close to your home.
Even if you have sand in a milk jug, don't go there, because the sand does what sand does and can smother it, but it's in plastic, and that's not safe. The plastic can melt.
Right, and they actually make products that are for cigarette butts. You see them outside of buildings. So, just take that extra step and invest in something that you can safely put that cigarette out so that, you don't worry about that catching something.
We're going to talk about smoke alarms indoors, but here's a random thought. Smoke alarms outside? That's odd. But I'm trying to rationalize whether that's a thing, whether that would serve a purpose.
Certainly within a structure, maybe a detached garage, or if you have
screened-in patio,
screened-in
perhaps.
patio, absolutely, smoke detector. You bet.
So let's talk smoke detectors.
Okay.
We're always reminded when the time changes to change our batteries, but technology has advanced it to the point where batteries don't need to be changed for 10 years.
Right. What we really have begun to recommend is that those smoke detectors are replaced within 7 to 10 years. That's kind of the life. They have the lithium, like you said, lifetime batteries in them, but we still need for you to replace them, every 7 years is kind of the rule of thumb. They should be on every floor of your home and outside and inside of every bedroom.
Outside and inside every bedroom. There are larger homes that have 4 or 5 bedrooms on 3 different levels.
Yep.
There should be a smoke alarm outside each one.
Yep, outside each bedroom and on the inside of each bedroom.
Kitchens. What's the recommendation for having a smoke alarm in the kitchen?
That's a tough one. It's better to place that smoke detector on the outside of the kitchen because, as you know, as you cook, you're going to cause that detector to constantly alarm. So just outside of the kitchen is recommended.
This has nothing to do with fire, but it has a lot to do with firefighters. We've gone through some heat, some triple digit. We're going to probably hit some more before the summer is through. Let's talk about a firefighter. You've been in gear when it's hot. Firefighters have to take precautions, safety precautions, and I hear this on the radio all the time. You swap out and you make sure that they rehydrate, and that happens on a regular basis when it's hot.
Yeah, you know, we really try to pre-plan when we're looking ahead and looking at the forecast. Pre-plan is the key, knowing what that forecast is going to look like. But, you know, just generally speaking, our firefighters try to prehydrate, even in the winter time. You know, we try to drink a lot of fluid, non-sugared fluid. Sports drinks are, you know, something that we use, especially in the summer months. But yeah, what has happened is we've gotten into the habit of just being more conscientious of that heat and switching rigs out, you know, just on a continuum if we're going to be at a structure fire or an event for a long period of time. We bring more rigs on scene and send others home. We also have a rehabilitation bus that we can bring on scene, and it has air conditioning, and so our firefighters are encouraged to go in there, dress down, take off their coat, and just try to cool off a little bit before they're rotated back into the structure.
Having been in your gear, in the firefighter gear, and in amongst fires that are going on for training purposes, there is a learned sensitivity, because the gear is so good, it keeps the firefighter from feeling the fire to a certain point, but that can be dangerous in and of itself. And so I talk about this trained sensitivity that you have to know when you're too hot or approaching becoming too hot. And
a lot of that is dictated in the time spent actually in action in fighting fire. Especially like you mentioned in the summer months. Our bottles are 45-minute bottles. That means that we can usually get about 30 minutes of hard work out of a bottle. When it's really hot outside, we're going to reduce that to 15 or 20 minutes in that actual fire operation. So everything is kind of reduced, and that's the battalion chiefs. You know, they're taking care of us. They're watching us. Of course, you know, we're always conscientious as well of how hot an environment is, and it is a bit of a learned behavior. You may not feel it, you just know it. It's just a sense of knowing, you know, exactly what kind of heat you're experiencing.
You have so much to think about when you're in there fighting a fire. Do you have this clock in your head that, I mean, you've done this a long time. I do what I do for a long time. There's a clock in my head knowing when 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
I'm guessing firefighters do too.
You bet, you bet. And, you know, a lot of that, Dale, goes along with the fatigue level. You know, you begin to feel a certain fatigue, and you know that you've been in there for, you know, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. So not only is or can summer be dangerous for you for barbecue, grills, you don't have to have barbecue, but grills outside, fire pits outside, safe smoking outside, but it can be dangerous for firefighters and paramedics too. So we want you to have a safe summer. All of this conversation, not to scare, but to educate. And we want you to have the safest, one of the most fun seasons of the year, and just do it safely. Nancy, thank you very much for being here on LNK TV for LFR. I'm your host, Dale Johnson.